Today I'll talk about two topics. The first one is, what exactly is the mainstream interpretation of status games and what they're missing out on? The second thing is, what people are actually hiding from you when they're telling you to avoid conspicuous consumption, which is consumption for the sake of increasing your perceived social status. After a night of bouldering, at dinner I asked a couple of my friends how would they define the status game and how has the status game materialized itself in their daily lives. And the first word that came out of their mouth was one up. And precisely one up is the most common tactic that people talk about when referring to status games in mainstream media, content creators, channels, TV, and whatnot. It's about using status to gain something, using a privileged position to gain what you want, one upping, always trying to one up another, to gain better titles so they can move up the corporate ladder, consuming as a means to show off. I think that mainstream media has a pretty negative image of what the status game is. And the biggest reason behind why they don't want to give you the full picture is because, that's my opinion, I don't think most people can reconcile with the fact that we are, after all, still animals. And animals still have to play the status game in order for them to thrive. And I'll explain why. Well, these games that the mainstream media talks about, the one-upping, the flashy status consumptions, are not for everyone and definitely will not work for everyone. What most of us are missing out on is a very simple fact. The fact that our existence is based off of status and the games we play to attain status. Status games, in my opinion, is to improve your relative social ranking within a hierarchy. This hierarchy is seen in all groups you belong in, no matter if it's corporate, at work, with your coworkers, in a friend group, in a run club, in a chess club, at a strip club, any location where groups of humans, of many individuals, gather and assemble to perform a specific act, status comes into play. We need to rank people. We need to rank individuals within a group so that both individuals and the group can thrive. We are to pick out who is the most competent by a number of different measures, and each type of measure would be a different type of status game. Say in my friend group, this guy's very successful. Noted, that's a social cue. Say another person, he's super fit and he knows how to train and be really healthy. Another status game. Say there's another person, he's really good with socializing with other people and relationships. That's an additional status game and a hierarchy that we use as information to arrive at who is better at what, so we can imitate to gain status benefits and very practical benefits so that the group as a whole can thrive. And for the group to thrive, individuals have to thrive as well. And that's why this tactic of imitating people who are relatively higher than you are in each of these different types of status games and measures of competence so that you can become better. And this is always there. You interact with someone, it's going to be there. If you're at work with your coworkers, the same thing happens. It's just that mainstream media is painting it in a pretty negative way so that people want to avoid talking about it. But why exactly do people not want to talk about status? Because the number one rule in Fight Club is that there is no Fight Club. It's that the moment you mention it, you are exposing status strategies of other people, possibly where they sit relative to other people. So there's more potential for you to sabotage what they're doing. So speaking about status in itself is a status lowering act, and not a lot of people want to talk about it. And that's why you'll see very not that's why you see a lot of people avoiding this topic. They think it's weird, and most people aren't able to acknowledge that we are still social animals. We are still animals, and we organize ourselves into categories through status. And that is for the good of the species. When speaking of the different types of status games that people play, I'd like to reference Will Storr's book, Status Game, pretty self explanatory, where he presents three types of status games that are commonly seen. The first one is dominance, where you're reaching higher status through dominating the social hierarchy, through coercing and forcing people to basically do what you want them to do. And through that, you win the game. But the second one is a virtue. This is where the term virtue signaling comes from, where you're appealing to the mind, you're using ideology, spirituality, and values and beliefs to claim a higher social rank within that group. The third one is success, where you achieve a specific desired outcome through excelling and following the rules of a social hierarchy. And that gains you that higher status. Mainstream media tells you to not play status games. Using their definition, they're persuading you to leave the ones they think are not helpful to help gain status, and are imploring you to join new ones. A common topic related to the status game topic is whether you should stay in a corporate job or just quit the job and live a life of freedom, move to another country, low cost of living area, and life is going to sort itself out. What they're telling you to do is exiting the game of success, which is most commonly seen in corporates, and telling you to pursue the game of virtue. Quit that job, move to a different country, and swap that status game you're playing to the status game of virtue, which I think in the corporate space right now makes a lot of sense. So there's nothing wrong with pursuing such a thing. It's just that I wanted to give an explanation on what exactly they're telling you to do from a status perspective. Because in the virtue game, having certain beliefs will gain you higher status in a group. And that's why a lot of people use virtue signaling to up their relative status in a group. Got all these rich people talking about how they care about the poor and whatnot. They're actually not following up on any of the virtue signaling that they're doing. It's just to maintain their status in a social setting. There's also a term coined by Rob Henderson called luxury beliefs, and it also talks about such an occurrence where virtue signaling is used as a way to up their relative status amongst their friends, other rich people they normally hang out with, to broadcast what they think and gain more status points. Now, swapping over to conspicuous consumption, when the media or when people are telling us to not go down the route of conspicuous consumption, we have to first understand why people do it. Conspicuous consumption is often used by people who climbed the ranks of society super fast. Say you won the lottery overnight, or you amassed a lot of wealth within 10, 20 years, or within one generation, without years and generations of accumulating cultural capital. So they're using this as a strategy to validate their newly earned high status brought forth by having a lot of economic capital. While splurging and demonstrating that you have the means to consume in such a way, you're also sitting in a pretty vulnerable position where you are very likely to suffer from reputational damage and would attract the wrong people to enter your social circle. The authenticity of relationships you have will drop drastically, and attracting a lot of hype men hype women who want to, one, gain status through association to you, and two, gain economic capital somehow. And these people are always plotting on how to milk you. What this does is it puts a target on your back. But why do so many people do this? Splurging and conspicuous consumption is oftentimes a symptom of status anxiety. When you feel uneasy and anxious about your current status, conspicuous consumption is a solution to the status anxiety you are suffering. It's a strong, an ultra strong reliance on retail therapy as a means of resolving status anxiety, a pretty extreme form of retail therapy. Now, there are a lot of things that trigger status anxiety. It can be how you're unsatisfied about how much money you're earning right now. So you consume to show that you are worth more. It could also come from stress, from all facets of life, and you just need an outlet to blow off steam. It also could be relationships when someone breaks up with you or rejects you. So you find even more of a reason for you to max out your credit card and solve this rejection through consuming. It can also be time lost from work. While you hold a very prestigious job, you make a lot of money, but you don't have any time on your hands. So, to compensate for the fact that you have no time, you're looking for ways to comfort yourself through buying new things. It can also come from social media comparison. When social media has closed off the proximity between the average person and ultra rich individuals. So this comparison of different lifestyles you're seeing on social media is leading to lifestyle inflation. Everyone I'm seeing on social media is living this way, then perhaps this might be true and I should also live the same way to not be left out. Because oftentimes we imitate in order to maintain our social position. And we follow the rules. We do whatever other people are doing. What do I think about the advice of avoiding conspicuous consumption? I 100% agree with the fact that conspicuous consumption should not be used as a means to achieve higher status. If you were to engage in any sort of consumption, it should be because you really desire that item you want to buy, or that service or trip, or anything that you want to consume. And to be sure that buying such a thing will permanently solve your problem for a long period of time, as opposed to just buying for the sake of buying and keeping up, upholding status or trying to inflate that status of yours, spending money that you cannot afford to spend. Because conspicuous consumption is also a really easy way to steal a rich life away from you. You're stealing from yourself in the future. And that will only bring misery and more depression, more anxiety down the line. As I already talked about, people can't seem to find a way to relieve that status anxiety. For instance, I have this former coworker I used to work with. He holds the title of a senior manager in a corporate, drives a really expensive BMW. Not that I know anything about cars, and buys all the Rolexes, has a Rolex collection, and is really prone to conspicuous consumption and flexing on all of his coworkers that he has all these possessions. And to be honest, I don't think he can comfortably afford all these things. It's only because of the fact that he wants to resolve status anxiety, because he wants to be perceived as someone who's really rich, powerful, top dog, highest rank in the hierarchy he's playing in. But that game, there's always someone richer. There's always someone richer. There's always someone who's got more resources. There's always someone who's gonna have more limited edition items, one of one in the world, than you do. So, in reflection of that, the conspicuous consumption game through the lens of status is a form of retail therapy. It's an extreme form of retail therapy, and there's no end to it. It's not solving the core of status anxiety. The only solution to status anxiety is to work towards something you really like. And to close off the video, some of my friends would ask me, why is it that I'm so obsessed with studying status and conducting all these social experiment on people, trying to understand, ask a lot of questions, understand their views on things related to status? It's precisely because I need to remind myself that there's so many games that exist, but you can only excel in a couple. And the majority of these games, we just cannot afford to play in and compete in. So what I'm using is status as a lens to understand why people do things, whether it makes sense for me to do the same by studying their motivations, the different games they play, whether they're imitating or they're trying to be unique in the game they're playing, and to arrive at what I think really matters. So this is going to be a journey, studying status. That's everything for today.